video about chainsaw milling, and yet I run a bandsaw mill. So it is going to be a little bit strange, and I'll kind of cover that a little bit later. This is a log that was dropped on my driveway. It has 6 or 7 large branch stubs on it. It was not a good candidate for milling because it's too big for my mill. It also wasn't a good candidate for splitting with a chainsaw into quarters because of the irregularity of it. So it was pretty much firewood or potentially large table slabs. And the way you get that done around here is with the use of a chainsaw mill. So the log, as I said, the log was here for 21 months. I was going to have Matt from Holler Slabbing come out and mill it into table slabs. But I got a call from one of my clients who had been here several times in the last year or so for other milling jobs. And he'd seen this log and couldn't figure out what to do with it. So it sat here for a long time, and then I got a call, and he said that he might have a use for it, and was it still available? And so I coordinated, basically I sold him the log, and coordinated with Matt from Holler Slabbing to come and cut it up. And so in this video we're at a bandsaw mill, and we're going to use a chainsaw mill to maximize the value of this log. And the client will be here. He had an appointment, but he'll come by. You'll see him in the video. We got 5 planks out of this log, and he'll turn them into tables. As far as I know, I think 3 of them are already spoken for, but there'll be a couple of extras. So this is the process of milling it. I would tell you up front that this took 3.5 to 4 hours to get this log milled up, and I had to cut it down to about a 20-minute video. So I'll try to explain some of the things by narrative, and also there'll be some clips as we jump through, but my intent is to show the entire process. What we're doing right now is leveling the log. When I work with the bandsaw mill, I strive to try to get as many hearts as possible. If you have crotches or a lot of figure in the log, try to get as many hearts in the same plane. That's not the same consideration when you're using a chainsaw mill, because you pretty much mill it as it lays. In this case, Matt is attaching a ladder. That's his primary guide system for the chainsaw mill. And if there's big knobs or whatever with a bandsaw, if it's smaller, I would cut those off in order to get to the proper plane. But in his case, that would be a lot of extra work, and so he's going to try to level it up, level the ladder, so that he can make his first pass with the chainsaw, and then he'll work his way down through the log from there. So we got it stabilized with some large wedges, and now he's attaching the ladder. The ladder is attached with brackets and straps, using wedges and blocks to put it in position, and then he lag bolts these brackets and straps down. As you can see, he's checking the length of the ladder for straightness. It is a relatively straight ladder, but you can certainly induce twist in that ladder when you fasten it down with lag bolts. And so he has to make sure it's secure and yet not induce any twist, because if the ladder is twisted when the mill goes across it, then the blade will twist and the boards will be twisted. In the foreground, you can see the mill that Matt's using. Matt actually has 2 chainsaw mills. He has a smaller mill that will cut about 42 inches in width. And then he has this mill, and this mill can cut up to 66 inches in width. The frame of the mill, the milling frame, is custom built. Matt built it for this saw. The saw is a steel 090. They're no longer manufactured, but it's a very large saw, and it has a 6-foot bar. And then he had to construct a mill that worked for the way he cuts. And also he's got things on there that like a a reservoir at the other end so he can lubricate the chain from both ends of the saw. It does take quite a bit of time to get it set up. This first cut's quite important, especially with as gnarly a log as this is. Instead of bracing along the main stem of the log, he's having to brace across these branch stubs. And there's the client who came by. He left shortly after for another appointment, but he came by to see the operation, see how it was going. It's not uncommon when I go to check out a job site for my bandsaw milling services, where I run across logs that are too large for the mill. And because of that, years ago, I would have to turn down the job, or at least turn down those logs and mill only the smaller logs that they had, because I am not into splitting them with a chainsaw and quartering them or things like that. And then I heard about Matt. And now, over the last couple of years, Matt and I have worked on quite a few jobs. In some cases, I will refer people to Matt who have a large log, and that may be the last I hear of it. They call Matt, Matt comes in and takes care of what they need. In other cases, Matt will come in and break the log down into manageable sizes that will fit on the mill. The mill does have an advantage in that my kerf is about 1/12 of an inch, and his is like 4/10 of an inch. So if he can break it down, and then I can if you're making 1-inch boards, a narrow kerf really benefits your project. In this case, he's making 2 3/4 inch thick planks, and because of that, the kerf isn't as much of an issue. But there have been a few occasions where Matt and I were actually there at the same time. Generally, he goes first, breaks the log down or cuts out the large table slabs, and then I come in and mill up what is left. There have been jobs where they were able to keep us busy. They were feeding him logs for the chainsaw mill and feeding me logs for the bandsaw mill. And it's a pretty efficient operation when you do it that way. And there's no doubt if he can't, if I can't cut it, he's right there to either trim it or to mill it. In this case, although he might normally start with a smaller saw for these opening cuts, because the log gets so wide at the end down there, he had to go with the larger saw. And the larger saw, 66 inches across, balanced on a 15-inch wide ladder frame, it can tip when there's not that much of it in the wood. So Matt asked me to kind of steady the other end so he could concentrate on the saw head. These passes take about 60 to 90 seconds per foot. So you'll see these editing jumps where I'll jump ahead so you see the different parts of the mill. Each pass, we're talking about some pretty heavy planks. So they are wedged. He'll get down the log a ways, he'll wedge the cut to keep it from binding the blade. And right before the end of the cut, he'll drive in wedges and then remove the saw. Now he's got to back out all the lag bolts, making sure, of course, that they're not as long as the cut is low, so he doesn't run into the lags with his chain. And like any project where you open a log, it's always nice to open up this first section and see what you got. We're always worried about ant nests or decay and rot inside. This log was solid. It was very swirly with all the branch stubs. There's going to be a lot of figure in this log. But fortunately, we went through the log and there was no decay at all. The heart was solid and there were no ants or anything like that. Now you'll notice that Matt is using the mill with the ladder on the second pass. That's still the first pass there was a little bit of unevenness, and so by putting the ladder on there and making a cut a second time, the ladder is much more well supported, and he can make a much flatter cut this time through. So the slab's still usable, it just may take a little more processing than the slabs that come down below it. There you can see the final set of wedges. It's a very long chain, and when you come out of the log, if that log drops on that chain as you're pulling it out, it could break the chain or bind the chain, and I'll be able to make a clean exit from the cut. So here's the first plank coming off, and these are probably 250 to 300 pounds a piece. So the forklift came in pretty handy for maneuvering and pulling those planks. You'll see that he has a very large tank mounted on the end of the mill, and that is for bar lube, chainsaw lubricant oil, basically, that he uses to lubricate the chain. So in addition to the oil reservoir on the saw head, this extra reservoir allows him to keep plenty of oil in the chain. As you can see in this cut, now he's got 2.5 to 3 feet of wood surface supporting the blade, so it's no longer necessary to use the ladder. When you work a log on the ground like this, you start out, it may be about waist high on a big log, but as you work your way down through it, you're just bending over a lot. So Matt's able to sit on the log, use his legs to push the mill, or even and spend most of the time on his knees, working on either side of the log to stay down where he can control the mill head.
The saw runs nice. Yeah, sometimes.
Unfortunately, the client had to leave for another appointment before we got into the meat of the log, but these are getting to be some very big planks. The forklift comes in quite handy for that. With this big saw, hearing protection is very important. I started out the day with just regular earplugs, the roll and squeeze earplugs, but after being around the saw that much, helping steady it and things like that, I found it a lot easier just to put on a set of muffs on top of the plugs, and it's still a loud saw. The length of the saw frame allows Matt to angle the saw back and forth. You know, he's not cutting straight timber. He's cutting knotty areas with a lot of grain changes and stuff, so he has to move it back and forth to efficiently get through the log. Matt said that people frequently ask him how much that rig weighs, and he didn't really know. He had an idea, but I did have a scale. So the answer is 76 pounds. That rig is 76 pounds to tote from back and forth to the log. Once it's in the log, it takes a little extra hand to get it started, but once the frame is resting on the top surface of the plank, then it's all supported, so it's just a matter of guiding it through the cut. You can see on the ground those are 8x8s. Those wedges are 8x8s, and that sawdust is that thick. It creates a tremendous amount of sawdust when you have a wide curve like that. So if you have a log mill with a chainsaw, be prepared for that. It makes a lot of dust. That was the last plank of the day. I'll sweep it off to see what we got. You can see that the log is rocking, and on a bandsaw mill that would be a problem if the log moves during the cut, or moves at all once you clamp it. But on the chainsaw mill, since the mill frame, everything is attached to the log, it just rides with the log. So if the log were to rock a little bit, it wouldn't be a problem. On the bandsaw, on the other hand, you'd probably bind your blade or break a blade if the log moves during the cut. The part that's left over, the client just asked that I mill that into 8/4 thicknesses of whatever we could get for small pieces, table legs, things like that. And it was still, at this point, still too wide to fit on the mill. But I took a chainsaw and I cut off one side, kind of leveled one side, and got it down to a dimension where I could then stand it up so the flat surface was vertical. Stand it up and then slice down through it. So we were able to get another 92 board feet of 8/4 material out of what's left laying there on the ground.